This is what the crumbling of rule of law looks like in real time. And it's exactly what the founders of this nation feared. A tyrant abusing power to persecute scapegoats and enemies. Look, I get it. There's nervous folks on my side of the aisle. They don't want us to touch any of this. I keep hearing this. Oh, the polling really, it sucks talking about this. It's a distraction from more important issues. Consultants said steer away from talking about this rule of law stuff. But caring about this stuff isn't partisanship or politics, it's patriotism.
Donald Trump has left is intimidation. Any political capital he had at the beginning of his presidency is gone. He is suffering daily losses, not just in courts, not just in the court of public opinion, but with Republicans in Congress as well. He is freaking out. And it is the reason he has turned to intimidation, trying to scare members of his own party into capitulating and trying to scare Democrats out of speaking out, but it is not working, in fact, backfiring. And we saw that in the latest example of Donald Trump's intimidation threats to arrest Democratic members of Congress, which continue to backfire with new information coming out of Congress. We are going to get into it all. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me now. Before we get into this breaking news shared publicly in Congress, I want to put into context with something that Governor Tim Walz recently said about Donald Trump's illegal immigration plan. Let's take a look right here.
Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo is scooping folks up off the streets. They're in unmarked vans, wearing masks, being shipped off to foreign torture dungeons. No chance to mount a defense, not even a chance to kiss a loved one goodbye, just grabbed up by masked agents, shoved into those vans, and disappeared. To be clear, there's no way for us to know whether they were actually criminals or not, because they refused to give them a trial. We're supposed to just take their word for it. And when duly elected members of Congress tried to exercise their constitutional right of oversight at an ICE facility, they get shoved around and threatened with arrest. And when courts told them repeatedly to knock it off, they brazenly defy them. Every single day, the President of the United States finds new ways to trample rights and undermine the rule of law. Now, I get it for some of you out there. Some would say, boy, it's getting way too political for a commencement address. But I would argue, I wouldn't be honoring my oath if I didn't address this head on.
Donald Trump is sending out his masked thugs. He isn't listening to courts. He is threatening to arrest anyone doing oversight because he knows his plan is failing and he wants to scare us. The cruelty is always the point. With Donald Trump's administration, he wants to make people scared. That's not just communities. That's not just moms and dads worried about their children, citizens or not. It's not just judges. It's members of Congress. You know, really, it's all of us. We should all be scared because they are willing to come after whomever stands in their way. They've made that very clear, and they're trying to make examples out of people trying to arrest members of Congress. And Dan Goldman called that out. And the silence coming from his Republican colleagues and a takedown of Donald Trump's arrest threats in this clip right here.
I don't hear my Republican colleagues talking about Article I power very much anymore, as Donald Trump and this administration have completely usurped all of Congress's power, the power of the purse, the power to use executive orders to overrule legislation, to cancel effectively to agencies that Congress created. But somehow you found Article I power when it comes to, quote, unelected bureaucrats. Now, I was a clerk for a district court judge in San Francisco who had a lot of patent cases. And really, they're so complicated and so technical that he might as well have thrown a dart at a dartboard to see which way it would come out. It was just beyond his expertise, which he would have readily admitted. And so the notion that judges somehow have more expertise about the intricacies of implementing complex laws, whether administrative laws, especially whether they be environmental or financial or in some other ways, is absurd on its face. And it may be politically expedient for my Republican colleagues to want to put this power in the court's hands, but it will make our system much, much less effective. And I'm frankly sick and tired of hearing the term unelected bureaucrat as if the patriotic men and women of our federal government who are working anonymously for the United States to execute our laws, to protect our borders, to engage in diplomacy abroad are somehow, because they're not elected to office, any less competent or expert than somebody who, I guess, who wins an election is preposterous. But I would note that if your concern is Article 1 power, I might encourage you all to speak up against this Department of Justice charging with criminal charges one of your colleagues for doing her job, her constitutional mandated job. Now, I know many of you think you take an oath to Donald Trump, but in reality, the oath is to the Constitution. And you ought to be very, very careful about continuing to stay quiet as this president ravages and destroys our democracy and completely undermines and devastates your Article 1 power. So if you're going to find God and recognize that there's Article 1 power when it relates to administrative law, I hope you will also find Article 1 power to stand up to a rogue authoritarian administration rather than continuing to sit quietly as your own power is taken away and your own colleagues are being arrested for what is so obviously a politicized, trumped up, bogus charge. And
Will the gentleman just yield for a friendly but
yes,
but probing question, I hope. Okay. So this is on the point of expertise. You have a lot of courtroom experience. Say there's a case about whether someone was driving DUI. There's no doubt that the chemist who knows about body chemistry and alcohol is going to know more than members of the jury, but we still leave the ultimate determination to the jury to use their common sense, but they're allowed to take in all of the expert testimony. So why is it that we would say we want somebody who has expertise to be making a decision on an ambiguous or inscrutable part of a statute rather than a court whose job it is to interpret the meaning of the law?
Well, it's clear the courts have to have a role, and I don't think any of us are saying that the courts shouldn't have a role, and that's why I wish we would work in a more bipartisan way to rewrite administrative law after Chevron, because this is a very, very important issue that will have many, many follow-on effects. But for a judge or a jury or anyone who's not a scientific expert or a specific expert in a field to learn an entire field without the benefit of those who are experts fundamentally undermines the efficacy of our laws and the implementation of our laws. So why we would shun expertise is beyond me. And I yield back.
It is so clear that they just want to scare us. That is their whole goal. That is the whole point here. They want to make a big spectacle out of Donald Trump's failed deportation plan. We talked about this in the first few weeks of his administration, that they weren't getting the numbers that they wanted. They couldn't hit their goals. And that was a great thing. But now, because of that, they're finding new ways to hit these arbitrary arrest goals, and that includes arresting and detaining us, citizens, arresting and detaining people who haven't broken the law, because it's a lot easier to do so. It's hard to find criminals, but they don't actually care about that. They just care about making the show, getting the pretend to win. Remember when Pam Bandy said Donald Trump has saved 250 million lives because they caught some fentanyl at the border that would have happened during the Biden administration? Anyways, these are people who are just caring about the public spectacle. It is a television presidency. That's what it's about. And they want it real quiet when they're making those ridiculous announcements. But we're speaking up. We saw more of that from Tim Walz in the speech that I want to check out more. We take a look right here.
Alive from whatever corner of the world they stick you in. And then you have a vice president. When not getting chastised by various popes, he's offering up horrific arguments. Horrific arguments. It is his view that due process is optional. I don't know what the hell they teach at Yale, but the Constitution is pretty clear. It doesn't say only if it's convenient. It's crystal clear. Here's the thing. Due process isn't just lawyer speak. It's a right that stretches back centuries. It was wrested away from kings that heroes fought and died for. And we're just going to surrender it? Surrender it to Donald Trump, a guy whose only knowledge of the law is by being a criminal defendant himself. So, and I am going to talk about it. It's happening in front of our eyes. I'm going to talk about this damn jet. I don't know if you heard it. The president is getting this I'm a little obsessive about things that really irritate the crap out of me and this type of stuff. Because this palace in the sky is getting from the Qatari government, which he gets to keep for himself when he's done. Let's be very clear. It's a flying bribe. Blatantly unconstitutional. Even worse, this whole deal was signed off on by the Attorney General of the United States. Ostensibly our nation's top lawyer. Famously an independent job. But now, the Attorney General Pam Bondi is acting as the president's personal attorney. And weirdly enough, coincidentally enough, she happens to be a lobbyist for the government of Qatar. This is what the crumbling of rule of law looks like in real time.
We have to keep speaking out. We have agency. We have seen Republicans cave. We have seen Donald Trump lose in court. We have seen people move on this issue in the beginning of the presidency. I felt like too many Democrats were scared to speak out, thinking immigration was a losing issue for us. But as AOC always says, Donald Trump's immigration plan is not popular. We just have not done enough work to make it unpopular, so let's do that work. Not only because it is the politically right thing to do, but it is the morally right thing to do. Let's keep fighting. We are certainly going to be doing so on this show, and if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.